Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're opening a file that, honestly, it reads less like a biography and much more like some kind of supernatural thriller.
It's a massive case study in extremes, for sure.
We are looking at a story that completely broke the internet in South Africa back in 2022. But the implications go way, way beyond just viral headlines. We're talking about a man who didn't just dabble in the dark side. He institutionalized it.
Right.
We were talking about RENOUNCED. This guy was the co-founder and the public face of the South African Satanic Church. He spent years building congregation, performing rituals, and, advocating for Satanism as this legitimate religious path.
And then almost overnight, he just dissolves his position. He walks away from the whole organization he built and declares he's a Christian.
Yeah, and usually when you hear stories like this, the first reaction is just skepticism, right? Is it a PR stunt?
Or a mental break, something like that. But what makes the source material, specifically his interview From Darkness to Deliverance, so gripping, is the technical detail he provides. He doesn't just say, I found God. He explains the mechanics of how he believes the occult actually works, why it hooked him, and the very specific supernatural event that he says forced him to quit.
And that's our mission today. We're going to strip away the sensationalism and really look at the how. How does someone go from, high-level occult rituals to a prayer meeting?
And more importantly, what does his whole journey tell us about the human craving for power?
I think that is the key word right there, power. It wasn't really a desire to be evil in some cartoon villain sense.
No, not at all. It was a response to a kind of spiritual hunger. He wanted results, and he was willing to go to extreme lengths to get them.
So let's get into that origin story. It's like he had the most standard setup. Born 1981, middle-class South Africa, Christian parents, Sunday school. No red flags at all.
But there is one very, very strange detail surrounding his points to as a marker.
The flood story. This part is wild. So his mother is pregnant, living in a town called Langsburg. It's January. She's still a month away from her due date.
Right.
And suddenly, she gets these really intense labor pains. So panic sets in. She and her husband rush to the hospital in a completely different town, Oudtshoorn.
And they get there, the doctors examine her, and they basically say, false alarm, you are not in labor. They send them to stay at the grandparents' farm nearby just to be safe.
But here's the kicker. While they are stuck in Oudtshoorn just waiting it out, Langsburg, the town they just left, is hit by one of the most devastating floods in South African history.
The entire town was practically wiped off the map.
If she hadn't had those false pains, they would have been right in the middle of it, right in the path of destruction.
As a kind of divine intervention, a protective hand on his life before he could even speak.
But the irony is, despite that protection, his actual experience with religion growing up was completely hollow.
He calls it powerless. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that feeling. He looked at the church and saw rules. He saw structure, polite people.
But he didn't see miracles. He didn't see the supernatural.
And for a kid who describes himself as naturally sensitive to the spiritual, that silence was just deafening. He wanted to see the engine running, not just, read the manual.
So around age 18 or 19, the drift begins.
But it wasn't a jump straight to Satanism. That's a huge misconception that you just wake up one day and decide to switch sides.
No, it's a gradient, a slow fade. He started with the seeker phase. Buddhist retreats, meditation circles, Hare Krishna temples.
He was sampling from the spiritual buffet, looking for something that tasted real.
And the hook, the thing that finally reeled him in, was a psychic reading. He goes to this holistic center, and a psychic tells him these specific private details about his childhood.
And she tells him he has a calling to help people.
That validation is so powerful.
Yeah.
He goes from getting readings to becoming a professional psychic himself around 2004. And he offers this explanation for how psychics know things they really shouldn't.
This part is actually pretty chilling.
He says he wasn't talking to dead relatives.
No, he introduces this concept of familiar spirits.
Okay, break that down for us. What exactly is a familiar spirit in this context? Because it sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
Think of it like a spiritual surveillance state. Or, even better, think of it like internet cookies and metadata. Explanation is that these are demonic entities assigned to watch individuals. They observe you from birth. They know your history, your trauma, what your grandmother nicknamed you. They are essentially just gathering metadata on your life.
So when a psychic claims they're channeling your deceased grandfather...
Ian argues they're actually just accessing this database. The spirit relays a fact. Your grandfather gave you a red bicycle, which creates instant credibility.
Of course. The client thinks, only Grandpa knew that.
And boom, trust is established. And once that trust is there, the deception can really begin.
That's terrifying. It's weaponizing the truth to sell a lie.
Precisely. Ryan says that once the client believes, the psychic, often, unknowingly influenced by these entities, starts steering the client's future away from God. And the demographic he was serving might really surprise you.
This shocked me. He says that in his current ministry, dealing with people trying to get out of the occult, 80% of them identify as Christians.
It exposes a massive vulnerability in modern faith, doesn't it?
He says when he was a psychic, pastors' wives would come to him for readings, astrology, even rituals to fix their marriages or finances.
Whoa.
They would sit there all guilt-ridden asking, is this wrong? And he'd just sell them a solution.
Well, it goes back to that instant culture we live in. We can get food delivered in 20 minutes. We get information in seconds. Prayer, sanctification, that takes patience. It takes waiting.
A psychic offers an immediate fix.
It's transactional. Do this ritual, get this result.
And that transaction eventually led him to the deep end. So it's 2015. A client challenges him to read the Satanic Bible.
Right, and I think most people assume it's just full of dark incantations and spells.
I know, I did.
But it's not, and that's why it's so effective. Ryan explains that the Satanic Bible is basically a manifesto of hyper-individualism. It's psychological warfare. It tells you that the reason you feel like an outsider is because you're superior. It reframes your insecurity as a form of godhood.
So it's just a huge ego stroke.
A massive ego boost. It tells you you are your own god. And for someone like Ryan, who felt powerless his whole life, this was intoxicating, so he joined up. And his first social event just shattered every stereotype he had.
He was expecting, what, robes and dungeons?
Probably. Instead, he walks in and sees the elite. Doctors, the soap opera stars he grew up watching on TV, politicians.
That's a dangerous kind of validation, isn't it? If these successful, smart people are doing it, it must be the secret sauce.
Exactly. It normalized the whole thing. It wasn't evil. It was the lifestyle of the successful. This confidence led him and 6 others to co-found the South African Satanic Church in 2020.
Their whole mission was to whitewash Satanism, right? Basically run a PR campaign to make it more palatable to the public.
And the timing. February 2020. I mean, right before the entire world shut down.
It was the perfect storm. People were locked in their homes, isolated, terrified.
And the church just exploded. It went from a few hundred physical members to 12,000 online members in a matter of months. They were selling control to people who felt completely helpless.
But Ryan draws a really hard line here. He says the whole philosophy of self-empowerment is just the bait.
That's the threshold.
What happens when you actually get initiated?
That's when the intellectual game ends and the spiritual reality takes over. He describes it as pure bondage. The feeling of being your own god just vanished, and he realized he was being used by something else. He talks about this pervasive atmosphere of fear and death.
So he's trapped. He's the public face of this huge organization. He's on TV mocking Jesus. He literally called him the Easter Bunny in one interview. But inside, he's miserable.
He was playing the part, but the cracks were definitely starting to form.
And the thing that just blew those cracks wide open.
Yeah.
It wasn't a debate. It wasn't some theological argument. It was a hug.
May 2022. He does that radio interview where he mocks Jesus. Afterwards, a woman at the studio, someone he admits he'd have been incredibly rude to, walks up and just hugs him.
And he describes this physical reaction, a startling warmth.
It just rattled him. He found out later she was a Christian, and he recognized that she had something he didn't. He had power, but she had love, and that love was dangerous to his entire worldview.
Which brings us to May 24th, 2022, the climax of the story. Ryan is alone in the Satanic Church building. He's setting up for a high-level ritual, candles, intentions, the whole works.
And then suddenly the room fills with light. Not candlelight, a supernatural light.
He sees a man standing there. At first, Ryan thinks it's an intruder, maybe a homeless guy. He's ready to kick him out. But then the man speaks.
He says, "I am Yeshua of Nazareth."
I love Ryan's reaction here because it's so honest. He doesn't fall down and worship. He's a skeptic.
He is. He says, "If you are Jesus, prove it."
He challenged a supernatural being. That's a bold move.
But look at the proof he got. He wasn't struck by lightning. He wasn't thrown across the room. He was just flooded with what he calls liquid love.
He says he saw his whole life in that moment. Every ritual, every mockery, all the darkness. And yet the only thing coming from this figure was absolute acceptance.
It completely broke the transactional model. In the occult, you give something to get power. Here, he was being given everything while deserving nothing. That is the core definition of grace, and it just completely dismantled him.
So he leaves the church, goes home, and basically crashes. Thinks he's lost his mind.
Stays in bed for 4 days. Then he gets this urge to go to the beach. And there, standing by the ocean, he has his first real conversation with God. No spells, no familiar spirits.
Just honest surrender.
Yeah. But if this were a movie, the credits would roll right there. Real life is messier.
Oh, much messier. The source material is brutally honest about the cost of this decision. He lost everything.
Literally everything. He had to resign, obviously. He lost his income, his house, his cars. The satanic community turned on him, and the Christian community was understandably suspicious of him. He was even homeless for a while.
He talks about swapping a life of luxury for solid foundations, but there's this one detail about his transition that I found so fascinating. He didn't just stop doing everything immediately.
The messy middle. This is such an important insight for anyone listening. Ryan admits that for 5 months after he accepted Jesus, he was still doing crystal healings.
Wait, really? So he's praying to Jesus, but still waving crystals over clients?
He didn't know any better. He thought, well, crystals are natural, God made them, so it's fine. It highlights the difference between salvation, which is instant, and sanctification, which is a process. It's a cleanup job.
So how did he finally stop?
He was driving to a client's house, and he says he just felt the Holy Spirit convict him. Just a hard no. So he pulled over, called the client, and canceled. He explained, I can't do this anymore because I follow Jesus now.
And the client.
The client started crying, said she had been praying for a sign. Because of his obedience in that moment, she ended up giving her life to Christ too.
That's incredible. It's like he had to let go of the old tools before he could be useful with the new ones.
Exactly.
Speaking of old tools, we have to talk about Adele.
Ah, yes. The nemesis turned partner.
So Adele is his current ministry partner. But back in the day, she was his target. Free and openly admits he tried to curse her. He claims he rallied 8,000 witches internationally to target this one woman.
It sounds like something from a fantasy movie, but to him it was strategic warfare.
And it failed. He says that the curse just bounced off.
He uses the term righteous standing. His explanation is that because she was a Christian, living in alignment with her faith, not perfect, but in right standing, she was spiritually untouchable. And it frustrated him to no end.
And now they work together. I mean, that is a serious plot twist.
It completely validates his new worldview. The power he has now is stronger than the power he tried to use against her.
There's one last visual I want to leave everyone with. Rian is covered in tattoos, including a big 666 tattoo.
Which he apparently hates.
I tried to get it lasered off, but he claims God told him to stop.
Keep the receipt. That was the message he got. God told him to keep the tattoos as a testimony. And it worked. There's this story where Ryan's at a gas station, just buying a pie, and a Hell's Angel biker big guy leather vest walks up to him.
Now, this is a guy who would never, ever listen to a pastor in his suit.
Never. But he sees Ryan's ink. He sees the 666, and he says, you look like one of us, but you speak like a Christian. What's your deal?
And that opened the door. Ryan prayed with him right there in the parking lot. The biker gave his life to Jesus. The very thing Ryan was so ashamed of became his credential to reach someone that no one else could.
It's a beautiful reminder that nothing is wasted. Even the darkest parts of your past can be repurposed if you surrender them.
You know, Ryan said something really powerful recently. He said, I don't want to be soft now that I'm saved. I want to go harder for the Lord now that I'm a Christian than I did for darkness.
That is such a challenge to the status quo, isn't it? He was all in for the darkness rituals at midnight, dedicating his body, recruiting thousands. He brings that same intensity to his faith now. He's just not interested in a passive religion.
So if we step back from all the supernatural fireworks, what's the big takeaway here? We have a guy who has seen the absolute extremes of both sides.
I think the core lesson is about the danger of the quick fix. Ryan's journey into the occult was driven by a desire for instant power, instant knowledge, instant control. It's a very modern temptation, but real faith, a real relationship. It's slow. It requires trust, even when you don't see the result.
So Ryan found that the fast path was a trap, and the slow path was the only one that was actually solid.
And he leaves us with a really provocative thought. He claims we're all living in a spiritual aquarium, that the physical world is constantly being observed and influenced by the spiritual. And whether you believe his specific theology or not, it forces you to consider. If your actions have weight in a realm you can't see, how does that change how you live today?
Rian is currently writing a book about all of this. And on a personal note, he's finally reconciled with his parents, the ones who prayed for him through that entire journey.
It's a good reminder that no one is ever too far gone.
That's it for this deep dive. A heavy story, but a necessary one. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.